We'll call that a highlight reel, but we haven't seen a lot of highlights from the Thunder in the second half of the season. It's been an absolute nightmare. They've won just 7 times in 20 games. They already have secured a playoff spot, but they're battling for that 7th or 8th seed out west, and the ISO ball has not been working since the All-Star break. Only the Magic have scored at a lower rate during that same time frame, and Tim Legler is back with us. They have the 3rd worst offense in the second half of the season, behind the Pelicans and the Knicks. How did we get here? What's wrong with this team?
Hard to imagine. 6 weeks ago, they were looking at the 3 spot and potentially playing Denver maybe in the second round, right? Feeling good about their chances to get to the conference finals. 6 weeks later, they might play the Warriors in the first round on the road. For me, it comes down to a few things. Predictability. When the Thunder struggle, they don't manage possessions very well. They tend to try to get it back by themselves when they hit a lull in a game, and that's when you see the quick, early forced shots. They're also not taking care of the basketball during key times, and they're letting leads now balloon against them, or they're letting teams back in the game because they're sloppy with the basketball. And then the last one for me is lack of trust. When this team is playing at their best offensively, the ball hops around, and they trust role players to make 3-point shots, and those guys make those shots when they get good looks. They also have missed a lot of open shots from the role players in the last 6 weeks as well. But I don't think the trust has been there. So it's a chicken or the egg question. Do they stop giving it to them because they don't trust them because they're missing? Mm-hmm. Or do those guys now start to lose confidence in themselves because their star players aren't trusting them? Any way you slice it, there's been a serious slippage on both ends of the floor because I think defensively they don't start off games the right way either. They've got to close the season well to make me think they have any shot whatsoever getting out of that 8th spot and potentially winning a round.
They have less than 2 weeks to get this ready, and the Lakers on that schedule. I know the Lakers don't have LeBron, but that team's won 4 of their last 5. We'll see how this plays out tonight.
All right, so the come after
past the second round, they never won it. At least 50 games. Washington had the 7th worst record in the league under Grunfeld, who took over as GM shortly after Michael Jordan was fired. He'll be linked to some bad deals as well, signing 4 players to $100 million contracts during his tenure. Keep in mind, John Wall has a monster 4-year contract extension that begins next season. He missed the majority of this season and could miss next season with a torn Achilles. NBA insider Adrian Wojnarowski joins us with much more on this story. And when they hire a permanent GM, Woj, what will be the biggest challenges that need to be answered in turning this franchise around?
Hey, Kevin, it's going to start with what direction do they want to go in, and is that to continue down the road Grunfeld had been on, which was trying to build a contender around John Wall, Bradley Beal? 4 years, $170 million owed to Wall next season when he will miss the year with a significant injury. Any kind of rebuild with that organization will have that Wall contract hanging over them and will limit what they can do. And Scott Brooks, their coach, who's still one of the better regarded coaches in the league, he's owed over $7 million a year, but the roster is the focus there. It's an organization that does have to draft better and certainly make some better decisions in the money they allocate in free agency. But it's an appealing job. There are a lot of sitting GMs in the NBA who've always had their eyes on Washington. I think it'll be a position that there'll be a lot of competition to get at.
Woj on Ernie Grunfeld getting fired by the Wizards after 16 seasons.
Having number 1 seed, it's very important. We want that so badly.
If we take care of our business, that should take care of itself.
I don't think anybody on our team is scared of the Golden State Warriors.
I think they know who we are.
Huge game in Oakland tonight as the 2-time defending champs host the Nuggets. And yeah, I do think they know who you are, Kevin. With the win, Denver would pull even with the Golden State atop the Western Conference standings. Yep, just 1 game separating them with 6 to go. The Denver Nuggets have been very good all season long. Here's how they've done it. Nikola Jokic has been the straw that stirs the drink for the Nuggets, leading the league in both touches and passes per game. In addition to averaging nearly 20 points and 11 boards, the big man's dishing out 7.5 assists, the most by a center since Wilt Chamberlain. But this is not just a one-man band, not even close. It's a very balanced attack. 7 different Nuggets players are averaging double figures this season. That is tied for the most by any team in the Western Conference. And Denver has been dominant at home in the altitude. 31-7 is their record at home, the best among Western teams. But they're going to have to win on the road tonight for a realistic shot at that 1 seed, which would give them home court throughout the Western Conference playoffs. But apparently, the importance of tonight's game depends on who you ask with the Warriors. Listen.
It's a big game in terms of the number 1 seed and protecting our home court. And if we take care of our business and win tomorrow, we're obviously in great shape down the stretch with the last 10 days of the season, so that we can prepare for the playoffs the best way we can.
It's another regular season game. Opportunity for us to do something and clinch home court, I would guess. But if we lose this game, so we'll just keep pushing.
That was Steve Kerr yesterday, and kind of typical Kevin Durant today. Just another game, no big deal. Here's the thing, Tim Legler. Steve Kerr does, happen to think that tonight's game is important when you think about home court in the playoffs. Which team, in your opinion, needs home court more?
Well, I think it's a much bigger deal for Denver, right? So if they get this game, they're tied. They're actually up 2 in the loss column in the conference record, so they have the inside track to home court advantage. Why is that such a big deal? Well, first, they have the best home record in the Western Conference, second best in the league. They're 9-3 against the other playoff teams in the Western Conference at home, just 4-7 on the road. So for a team that's a young team that's making this leap to think that they can get to the NBA Finals, you want to have as many games in your building as you can, because if you fall in an 0-2 hole, if you're the Denver Nuggets, you have to go on the road against one of these teams later in the playoffs. It could be something you can't dig yourself out of because you're not familiar with that territory. So for me, mentally, a much bigger deal for the Nuggets to be in the 1 spot. Golden State, been there, done that. They know they can go on the road and win a game if they have to in a series to turn it around. A young team really needs the security of starting out in a series at home.
That altitude, when people come to Denver, that could make a huge difference. Here's the thing. Denver won the first meeting this season, but the last 2, Golden State has won by an average of 24 points per game. A lot of people don't really know much about this Nuggets team. They're not on national TV very often. What do you need to see from them tonight?
Well, look, offensively, they're going to be fine. They've got a diverse offense. They've got great balance. They've got a star player to facilitate. Defensively, though, I need to see a team that can get physical with the Golden State Warriors. The last 2 times they played them, they gave up just under 150 points in the first half of those 2 games and allowed them an absurd 56% from the 3-point line in those 2 games. I specifically remember the game in Denver earlier in the year. Golden State came in. We hyped it up. Denver was in first place. Golden State put up 51 points in the first quarter and hit 10 threes on this team in their building. A true statement. If you don't get physical with their guards on the perimeter and show that you can slow them up and contest the 3-point line better, you can't play with this team. So Golden State really embarrassed them on that end of the floor. So win or lose tonight, I need to see the Denver Nuggets compete at the 3-point line and get more physical with Golden State's perimeter players.
Okay, by the way, postseason perspective, it's been 6 years since they've been in the playoffs, a decade since they won an actual playoff series. But a lot begins tonight. We'll see how they play tonight. Again, that's in Oakland. Tim Legler, thank you.
Thank you.
Back to baseball with another young star signing a long-term deal. 21-year-old Ronald Acuna Jr. has agreed to an 8-year contract with the Braves worth $100 million. The 2018 National League Rookie of the Year is the youngest player in baseball history to sign a 9-figure contract. Also the largest deal for a player under club control with less than 1 year of Major League service. And this deal continues the feeding frenzy on extensions. It's the 8th $100 million extension in the last 2 months, along with Trout, Arenado, Sale, and Jacob deGrom, among others. When you mix in deals for Verlander and Blake Snell and many more, that's nearly $2 billion in extensions over that same time frame. Tony and Mike answering the biggest question from all these moves.
All right, Wilbon, what do all these baseball contract extensions tell you about the future of free agency?
Nothing. They don't tell me anything about the future of free agency.
They don't?
A lot of these are going to young players, Tony. You got Jimenez with the White Sox, who's 22. You got Bregman, who's 25. 6 years, $100 million. Jimenez hasn't even played yet. 6 years, $43 million. Ronald Acuna Jr., 8 years, $100 million. People feel good when you make a large gesture, like saying, look, I don't have to do this, but let me give you some more money. Let me keep you here. We want you here, and we're going to give you $100 million in the case of two of those three. I'm not talking about the older guys like Chris Sale, things based on performance.
Right.
And so I think that gesture means something to players, young players.
You're talking about $100 million. Manny Machado went out on the open free agency market, and it took a long time, but he ultimately got $300 million. Bryce Harper, young, like Machado is young, went out on the open market of free agency and got $330 million. There's a vast gulf between $100 million and $330.
Well, Trout stayed and got $400
Right.
million.
Well, Trout's the best player of all.
Okay.
My sense is two things matter. How good are you?
Yeah.
Because if you're real good, you can get money in the free agency market. But more importantly, do you want to leave? Or do you want to stay? There are no bird rights here like in the NBA.
Right.
If you want to stay, let your team make you happy. And if you want to leave, go to free agency.
Would your bosses offering you $50 million when you didn't even ask for it, would it make you happy?
Yes, sure.
Thank you.
Certainly.
Case closed. Certainly. That's a bell. We're done and back to you.
Still ahead on this edition of SportsCenter, the Mort Report. Chris Mortensen on the Cardinals' choice between Kyler Murray and Josh Rosen with the NFL Draft just over 3 weeks away. Plus, the big business of Zion. Details inside the bidding war that is set to begin for Duke's mega